My husband laughed loudly with his friends. I'll B-utally dump her after she signs over her business, she's so naive. I placed the signed prenup on the table and said, not naive enough to skip legal advice. They all fell silent. I watched them leave that night, Donnie looking sheepish, Caleb avoiding eye contact, and Victor giving me a subtle nod as if he understood, maybe even approved. Carter trailed behind them, hesitating in the doorway with this look of disbelief plastered across his face, like he still couldn't wrap his head around what just happened. When the door clicked shut, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood in the middle of our kitchen, the kitchen I designed from scratch, from the mahogany cabinets to the vintage tile backsplash, and I exhaled like I hadn't in months. I wasn't even angry in that moment. Just empty. Quiet. Like all the noise of pretending, compromising, and doubting had finally been turned off. The silence didn't last long. He came back in 15 minutes later, reeking of whiskey and arrogance. You really think you're clever, huh? He said, his voice already louder than it needed to be. I looked up from the couch, not bothering to pause the TV. Some rerun of Frasier was on. It made the whole moment feel surreal. I don't think I'm clever, I said. I just stopped being stupid. Oh, come on, Rochelle, he scoffed, throwing his arms up. You're gonna blow up our marriage over one joke? That wasn't even serious. You were spying. That's messed up. I turned the TV off then. A joke. I stood slowly, the weight of the past few years pressing on my shoulders. You called me naive. You said you were going to dump me after I handed you half my business. You weren't joking, Carter. You were planning it. He rubbed his face with both hands. People say shit when they're drunk, babe. It was poker night. You know how Donnie is. He stirs things up. I got carried away, save it, I cut in. You've been acting shady for months. Pushing the prenup, pretending to care about the bakery, always asking about the new locations. You weren't supporting me, you were studying me. You were waiting for the right time to take your cut. I've been helping you, he barked, eyes flashing. I've sacrificed, I've put in time. You've baked 3 muffins in your entire life, I snapped. And they were raw in the middle. He went quiet. That stung more than I expected. Good. You used me, I said, softer now, almost to myself. You came into my life when I was vulnerable. I thought I'd found a partner, someone who wanted to build something with me. But you just wanted a shortcut. His voice was suddenly small, like he knew I was right, but couldn't stand to admit it. I needed a win, Rochelle. And there it was. The truth. The raw, selfish truth behind it all. He sat on the edge of the armchair like his knees had given out. I lost my last job. I was in debt. You were solid. And you looked at me like I mattered. You were this whirlwind of success and warmth, and I thought I could be part of that. I didn't mean for it to go this way. I just looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I'd shared my bed with. Trusted. Loved, even. I don't hate you, I said finally. But I won't let you rob me just because you lost your way. He nodded. Quiet. The fight had drained out of him. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The divorce process started the following Monday. He didn't contest much. My lawyer, Miss Lyle, was thorough and brutal, and Carter's attempt to guilt me over text messages didn't exactly help his cause. I saved every screenshot, every veiled threat, every pathetic attempt at reconciliation. My staff didn't know the details, but they knew something had changed. I walked into Sweet Moss that Tuesday with a kind of energy I hadn't had in years. Focused. Fierce. Nia caught me before I could disappear into the kitchen. You okay, boss? I smiled. A real one this time. Never better. She raised an eyebrow. So, we getting the new espresso machine? I laughed, genuinely. Order 2. And just like that, I got to work. Expanding. Reinventing. Reclaiming every inch of my life. But it wasn't all glamorous, of course. There were nights I lay awake wondering how I missed the signs. Days when certain songs would come on the radio and I'd have to switch them off because they reminded me of the early days, the hopeful ones, when he still felt like a miracle. There was the awkward call from my parents, who had adored Carter and didn't understand what had happened. I told them the truth, but only the broad strokes. The rest was mine to carry. Then there were the quiet mornings, drinking coffee in my empty kitchen, Ludo at my feet, the sunlight streaming in just right, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to go wrong. I felt free, and that was worth everything. About 3 weeks into the divorce process, Carter started showing up unannounced. It was never anything dramatic. He wasn't banging on windows or anything. He'd just be in the area, and figured he'd stop by. Once he dropped off a box of old photos. Another time it was a pair of earrings I hadn't even realized I left at his condo. I figured you might want these back, he said one afternoon, holding them out with a sheepish grin. I glanced at them. Diamond studs. He gave them to me on our second anniversary, the same night he got too drunk and called me by his ex's name. I never wore them again. No, thanks, I said, leaving them in his hand and stepping back into the bakery. He stood there awkwardly for a moment before muttering, okay, yeah, no problem. That was the last time he tried the soft approach. The next week, his lawyer sent a letter. Carter wanted to review the fairness of the prenup. I was at the Savannah location that day, overseeing the installation of new lighting. I stepped out back, read the letter twice, then called Miss Lyle. She answered on the second ring. I saw it. I already filed the response. Do I need to be worried? There was a pause. Then, no. But you need to be ready. He's trying to dig. He started asking questions through back channels. People I hadn't heard from in years started popping up in my inbox. Old college acquaintances, former employees, even my ex-sister-in-law from my first marriage. At first, it felt like coincidence. Then I realized they all had the same tone, overly friendly, vaguely probing. Hey, just curious, how much do you think your bakery's worth now? Did you always run things solo? Didn't Carter help a lot? That's when I knew. He was looking for a crack. Anything that might make the prenup look unfair or invalid. So I stopped playing defense. I called Victor. He picked up sounding surprised. Rochelle? Hey. I need to ask you something, I said. And I need a straight answer. Okay. That night. Poker night. When Carter made that comment, was it the first time? Victor didn't answer right away. I need to know, I pressed. He sighed. No. He's been talking like that for a while. Not always that blunt, but yeah. He said stuff. Bragged about how the prenup was gonna make him an investor without investing. Said he'd play house for a bit, then cash out. My stomach turned. Thank you for being honest, I said quietly. I should have said something sooner. Yeah, you should have. We were ordered to mediation. The courthouse conference room had beige walls, bad coffee, and the kind of overhead lighting that made everyone look tired. Carter came in with his lawyer, some fast-talking guy named Byron who looked like he practiced in the mirror. I sat across from them with Miss Lyle. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was enough to tilt the room. Byron started. We believe the terms of the prenuptial agreement, while technically enforceable, present a lopsided division of marital expectations. Mr. Hartwell, while cut in, planned to abandon the marriage immediately after obtaining what he falsely believed was joint business ownership. We have audio evidence of this plan, obtained through a synced device on a group call. Byron blinked. That may not be admissible. Maybe, she said coolly. But it's already been reviewed by our forensic tech. And you'll find out soon enough it wasn't just words. We also have text messages, statements from mutual acquaintances, and a history of financial deception going back before the marriage. Would you like to continue? Carter's jaw clenched. He didn't look at me. He just sat there, quiet and red-faced. I think we're done here, Lyle said, gathering her folder. Unless your client wants to voluntarily withdraw all claims and sign a clean separation. Silence. Then Carter spoke. I just wanted something of my own, he muttered. No, I said. You wanted something of mine. There's a difference. He didn't respond. Just stared at the table, as if it might give him a different outcome if he glared long enough. The fallout hit him harder than I expected. He tried to spin the narrative. Told mutual friends that I'd ambushed him, tricked him, set him up. But the thing about Charleston is, it's a big city with a small town heart. Word gets around. And a few of the friends he tried to turn? They already knew. They'd seen the signs. Some had even warned him quietly, discreetly, to be careful. Turns out, I wasn't the only one watching. I bumped into Victor again at a local charity gala. He was by the bar, looking sheepish. Didn't think I'd see you here, he said, sipping something amber. I'm on the board now, I replied, eyeing him carefully. He gave a short laugh. Of course you are. I nodded. Why didn't you speak up sooner? I was scared, he admitted. Not of you, of the mess. I figured it was none of my business. But now, I know better. I didn't say anything. Just sipped my wine. You know, he added after a pause, Carter's crashing. Fast. The consulting gigs dried up. Nobody wants to work with him. Even Donnie's keeping his distance. Actions have consequences, I said. He nodded again, then hesitated. You ever need anything, professional advice, security recs, HLL, someone to carry chairs, I owe you. I gave him a small smile. Thanks. I'll keep that in mind. The Charleston store threw its 10-year anniversary party a few weeks later. Nia organized everything: string lights, jazz trio, a wall of photos from the early days. Customers came in waves, some bringing flowers, some just wanting to shake my hand and say they remembered when I used to take orders at the counter myself. I stood near the pastry table, watching people laugh and mingle under the warm lights. My mother showed up unexpectedly in a navy blouse and heels far too high for her usual taste. "You didn't tell me it would be this nice," she said, handing me a gift bag. "I didn't know you were coming. Your father insisted." I peeked inside the bag. A framed photo of my grandmother standing in front of her tiny diner in the 60s, apron on, spatula in hand, same eyes as mine. "She'd be proud," Mom said softly. "I hope so." She looked around. "And he's not here, I take it?" "No," I said. "He's somewhere else. Learning a lesson, I hope." Mom gave a small, approving nod. "Good." Then she hugged me, tight, proud, and warm. That night, I closed the bakery myself. The staff was gone, the music off, the leftover pastries packed up for the local shelter. I sat at the window with a cup of tea, looking out at King Street, the flicker of neon signs, the occasional rumble of a late-night bus. Ludo curled up at my feet, snoring lightly. I thought about all of it. The ambition, the trust, the betrayal. I thought about the moment I first saw Carter. That Atlanta seminar, the way he watched me like I was already his. And I thought about the moment I watched him leave. Part of me still wasn't done processing it all. And maybe I never fully would. But I had reclaimed my voice. And I wasn't done using it. 2 weeks after the bakery's anniversary celebration, I got a letter in the mail that stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't from Carter directly. It was from a firm in Atlanta, a name I didn't recognize, sealed with official-looking tape, thick and stiff like it was hiding a secret. I opened it at the kitchen counter with the same caution I used for opening old family recipe boxes, half expecting moths or a surprise. It was a formal notice. Carter had filed a claim against my original business investment. Not the bakery as it stood now, but the seed money I'd put into it nearly 10 years ago, before I ever knew him. His lawyer was arguing that the growth of Sweet Moss, even pre-marriage, was part of a joint marital effort due to advisory influence. My fingers were shaking when I flipped to the second page. I reread the words 3 times, letting them sink in. He was now trying to take credit for the very beginning of Sweet Moss. Before the storefront. Before the logo. Before the ovens. Back when I was baking cookies out of my tiny kitchen at the duplex on Rutledge Avenue and selling them out of the trunk of my car at the Charleston Farmers Market. That was a different me. A girl with flour under her nails, exhausted eyes, and not a single cent in savings. He wasn't there for that version. But he was now trying to rewrite the history. Miss Lyle was calm, like she always was, but I could tell it irked her. This is desperation. He's scraping the bottom of the barrel. Can he win? I asked. She tilted her head. It's weak, but annoying. He's gambling on you settling to avoid the hassle. I leaned back in the chair. He's not tired yet. She gave me a long look. People like Carter, they don't know how to lose gracefully. Especially not to someone they thought they had wrapped around their finger. She wasn't wrong. I could have settled. Cut him a small check just to make him go away. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about principle. It was about the hours I worked while he slept in. The deliveries I made in the rain. The thousands of cookies, cakes, and loaves I baked while he played pretend CEO at cocktail parties. No, he wasn't going to get a dime from Sweet Moss. That night, I found myself digging through old boxes. Not because I had to, Lyle's team had all the documents already, but because I needed to see them for myself. Receipts, vendor orders, emails, journals, even napkin sketches of the original logo, drawn while I waited for a flat tire to get fixed. I sat on the floor of my guest bedroom with these scraps of my life spread around me like sacred artifacts. Ludo sat beside me, nudging my arm every now and then with his warm nose. I hadn't let myself really feel all of it until then. I'd been moving on so quickly. Expanding stores, appearing confident, making speeches at events. But in that moment, I just let myself ache. Ache for the betrayal, for the wasted years, for the shame of being played. And when I was done, I packed everything neatly into a single box and labeled it in Sharpie, proof of me. The hearing was set for late March, and Charleston was right on the edge of spring. The dogwoods were blooming, and the air was thick with that heavy, humid promise of summer. I hadn't seen Carter in person since the mediation. He walked into the courthouse in a fitted navy suit and sunglasses, holding a coffee cup like it was a damn accessory. He looked thinner. Not sick, but like the kind of thin that happens when stress replaces meals. He caught my eye but didn't smile. He didn't even nod. We didn't speak. His new lawyer did most of the talking this time, not Byron. This one was younger, slicker, more composed. She argued Carter had provided business guidance in the early years, that he influenced expansion strategy, and was instrumental in helping Ms. Hartwell navigate operational decisions. I almost laughed. Instead, I leaned over and whispered to Lyle, instrumental like the time he suggested we offer gluten-free key lime pie in Charleston. She smirked. And how'd that go? 3 orders. Total. When it was our turn, Lyle stood like she was anchoring the damn room. Your Honor, we have a complete paper trail from the inception of Sweet Moss, receipts, vendor contracts, emails, branding drafts, all of which predate this marriage. We have witness statements from early employees who never saw Mr. Hartwell contribute in any formal way. We also have correspondence indicating Mr. Hartwell's understanding that he held no stake in the business prior to marriage, and, crucially, no ownership following it, as per the signed and notarized prenuptial agreement. She paused, then delivered the KL-ling blow, and, should it be necessary, we are prepared to present a recording of Mr. Hartwell explicitly stating his intent to use the marriage as a means of financial extraction. Carter flinched. Actually flinched. The judge didn't react much, but I could see her scribbling more vigorously after that. We left that hearing not with a decision, but with momentum. Everyone knew which way the wind was blowing. Even Carter. He didn't speak to me when we passed each other in the hallway. Just kept his head down, eyes on the tile. The man who once stood on my back porch with a guitar trying to win me over was now walking like he didn't recognize my face. Good. Later that week, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. You won. I'm not fighting it anymore. I'm sorry. No name. No context. I didn't need it. I stared at the message for a while. Not because I was debating replying, I wasn't, but because part of me still hated that tiny, aching bit of my heart that wanted to believe he meant it. That he felt bad. That he wasn't always lying. But I couldn't trust that feeling anymore. I tapped delete. And that was that. 3 weeks after Carter dropped his case, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I let it ring the first time. I figured if it was important, they'd leave a message. They did. I played the voicemail in my office at the Asheville branch, sipping a fresh Cordideau from our brand new espresso machine. Hi, this is Haley. I don't know if you remember me. I met you briefly at a charity mixer in Charleston a while back. I'm reaching out because, well, I think we need to talk. It's about Carter. Can you give me a call? My stomach nodded for a second. I recognized the name now. Haley was the woman Carter had introduced to me at a fundraiser, just someone from the gym, he'd said. I'd shaken her hand, smiled politely. She had one of those high, fluttery voices that somehow always sounded like it was asking a question. I never gave her a second thought. I called her back an hour later. She answered on the first ring. Rochelle? Thank you for calling. I wasn't sure you would. What's this about? I asked, keeping my tone flat. I don't really know how to say this, but I found your name on some paperwork Carter had in a drawer. It was a prenup. He never mentioned your business. Ever. Just said you were his ex and things ended weirdly. I leaned back slowly in my chair. How do you know Carter? There was a pause. I live with him. Well, I did until yesterday. We were together for about 6 months. He told me he was divorced and that he'd been screwed out of his share of a business. He said you manipulated the courts. My hand tightened on the phone. I figured he was bitter. People say crazy things about exes. But yesterday, I saw him messaging someone on Facebook, asking if they'd invest in a new bakery concept. He was calling it Sweet Earth Cafe. He even used some of your branding in the mock-ups. I froze. He doesn't know I saw, she added quickly. But I packed my things last night and left. I don't know. I thought you should know. I closed my eyes. Thank you, Haley. That was brave of you. I'm sorry, she said softly. I think I was his next target. But he's not going to stop. No, I agreed, standing now, grabbing a pen and notebook. But I am. That night, I filed a cease and desist through my intellectual property attorney. Carter was trying to launch a new bakery under a suspiciously familiar name, using similar fonts, colors, and even a couple of menu items that were eerily close to Sweet Moss signatures, including my mother's banana bourbon loaf. The nerve of him. We also sent a formal warning regarding brand infringement and misuse of proprietary recipes. Within 5 days, his domain was taken down, his crowdfunding page shut off, and the investors he'd been pitching got spooked. But I wasn't done. I sent a private message to Carter through my lawyer. Not a threat. Not legal jargon. Just a short, blunt sentence. This is the last time you try to build something with my bricks. No reply. Just silence. But the real revenge? That came a few months later. Charleston was hosting its annual Taste of the Coast Food and Drink Expo. It's a huge deal for local businesses, a weekend where chefs, bakers, brewers, and artisans showcase their best. Sweet Moss had been invited back as a legacy vendor for the first time, and I was scheduled to do a live baking demo on the main stage. I hadn't been on stage since the divorce. My hands were sweating the morning of the event, but not from nerves. It was anticipation. There was something symbolic about it, like stepping out into the light after everything. We had a booth set up with 3 tables, each stacked with mini pastries, sampler boxes, and hand-folded flyers with the bakery story, my story. My team wore black aprons with our logo embroidered in gold thread. Ludo wore a bow tie. We were polished. We were proud. And halfway through the first day, guess who I saw walking the vendor floor? Carter. Alone. Looking like a man lost in a mall he used to own. He kept his eyes low, pretending to browse, but I knew he saw me. He didn't approach. Not until the end of the day when most of the booths were packing up. He walked up to the edge of our tent, hands in his pockets. Still the same posture. Still the same cologne. It hit me like a ghost. "You did well," he said quietly, nodding toward the booth. I kept stacking boxes. "I know." He smiled awkwardly. I was stupid. I finally looked up. "Yes, you were." There was a pause. A long one. "I just wanted to matter," he said. "You had it all figured out." I didn't know where I fit. "You could have fit," I said. "If you'd come to support, not to steal." He nodded, but didn't speak. And then he did something I didn't expect. He pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket and placed it gently on the table. "What is that?" "My release. From all claims. Business, marriage, everything. I already sent a copy to your lawyer." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "I'm tired," he admitted. "And maybe?" "I don't know. Maybe I just wanted you to know I'm done fighting." I didn't say thank you. I didn't forgive him. But I took the envelope. He gave a tiny, almost broken smile. Then he left. Slowly, quietly. And I watched him disappear into the crowd, just another man among thousands. It's been 6 months since the expo. Sweet Moss now has 5 locations across the Southeast. We launched a seasonal cookbook that sold out twice. We've got a contract with a boutique grocery chain starting next year. And next fall, we're opening a baking school for women entrepreneurs in Charleston. I've been interviewed on 2 local TV shows and once on the radio, where I was asked what advice I'd give to women balancing love and business. My answer? Trust your gut. Protect your work. And never ever let anyone convince you that your success is a shared resource. And sometimes on quiet evenings, I think about Carter. Not with rage. Not even with sadness. With clarity. He wanted to ride a wave I built with my own hands. But I didn't drown. I surfed. And now? I'm still rising.